I'm going to call the October 11th, 2022 business meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Dr. Campley?
Here.
Mr. Dorr?
Here.
Mrs. Evans-Brockett?
Here.
Mr. Fountain?
Here.
Mr. Keenan?
Here.
Dr. Kohler?
Here.
Mrs. Mayers?
Here.
Mr. Saylor?
Here.
Ms. White?
Here.
All right, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The mission of the Perkiomen Valley School District is to cultivate an inclusive community of learners empowered to grow intellectually, socially, and emotionally. I'm looking for a motion to improve the minutes for September 12th, 2022 and October 3rd, 2022. Nice. Totally skipped over that. Correct. Looking for a motion to approve the agenda as presented, please. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussions? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye. Against, nay. The ayes have it. Now moving on to 1.06. Request to approve the minutes for September 12th, 2022 and October 3rd, 2022. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. Any discussions? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion to approve the minutes, say aye. Aye. Against, nay. And the ayes have it. Mrs. Maris, we'll hand this over.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The Perkiomen Valley School District Board of Directors is pleased to recognize Perkiomen Valley High School teachers, Ms. Verche and Ms. Bialabaki, and their students for their development and implementation of 2 vocational experiences at the high school, the Perk Up Cafe and Perk Up Pins. Before we present certificates of recognition, I would like to invite Ms. Verche and Ms. Bialabaki to the microphone to share some information about the vocational services at the high school.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Stephanie Bialabaki.
And I'm Ashley Roche.
And we are working together collaboratively to create the Perk Up Project, which is serving our students in the low incidence program here at the high school. The first thing we'll talk about is the Perk Up Cafe, and this was started in April of 2021, which was the pandemic year. And we wanted to create an opportunity that would allow our students to have a variety of tasks that they would be able to participate in to the level of their ability and with whatever time frame they needed to be as independent as possible. So we send out an order form on Mondays, and teachers can place an order for hot coffee, hot tea, iced coffee, iced tea, or hot chocolate. And then throughout the course of the week, the students work to prepare coffee condiment bags and put the orders on our receipt form, and they do some data entry, and they have to label the cups and do inventory. And then on Fridays, we make everything, get it all ready, and go out and deliver to the teachers, collect payment. And that is probably the favorite part of most of the students. We have some pictures up there of different tasks. And I think one of the best things about the Perk Up Cafe is that while it was designed as something to benefit our students, it really ultimately benefited the teachers and people that were ordering the beverages as well. We got a lot of really positive feedback about how they just loved having our students come in. They got to see them and interact with them. They got to get a beverage in the middle of the day. So it was really a win-win situation for everyone.
A newer opportunity that we've had that started last spring was Perk Up Pins. And the PV School District Foundation helped us get a grant to secure some materials that we could design, create, cut out, assemble pins that have different school-themed backgrounds. And then our students cut them out. They learn how to use the button-making machines and actually press the buttons. Then we do things like packaging, labels, inventorying. Students respond to emails with orders. We track sales, create social media posts on our Perk Up Pins Instagram. And we've had the opportunity to sell some pins at the Inclusion Night football game. So that was a great night to get some of our students out and seeing the customers and delivering that pin with a smile. So that's a newer opportunity that we have. We also do some other jobs around the school. For example, we deliver mail from the main office. Teachers sign up, and we bring them their mail either in the morning or afternoon or both. We've also recently started sorting the post office mail and the interoffice mail from the district. And then we do different jobs for teachers. We offer to cut, laminate, do filing, data entry. And we also just started working in the supply closet, where we access the email for the supply orders. Students respond to staff requests. They check if we have the supplies. We package up those orders and deliver them. Sometimes there's a bit of communication that goes back and forth via email. So our students are learning how to have those conversations with staff members.
All right, and so we also are hoping to expand further. We recently had a grant that awarded us a greenhouse, and we also just got some donations that we can start to plant some lettuce. And that's something that we're in the process of working on right now. We also had the idea of beginning a dog treat business, which is something I personally have experience with from my previous district. And it would be a nice opportunity to work on those domestic maintenance skills, the kitchen safety. We'd be able to cook and bake and measure and all of that without also having to eat those things.
My name is one of my favorite parts. You guys' names.
And that's something that, it's a consumable that we would be able to hopefully take out into the community at like a craft fair. We could expand it out to other schools in the district. We also are in the process of working with the food service, and that's going to be an opportunity for our students to go into the cafeteria, into the kitchen area, and do a variety of different tasks. They are very open to having our students, and whatever ideas we have, they're open to trying out and making work. So we're hoping to start that soon. And then our final thing we're calling Perk Up Promotions, which is hopefully greeting cards or different kind of vinyl projects. We have a Cricut machine, and just looking at different opportunities to help our students just learn a variety of different tasks. So we have the mail, we have coffee, we have pins, but just other areas of businesses and skills and different kinds of tasks for them.
All right, these are our students that participate. We have a list of our students, and we also brought some of our students with us tonight to distribute some coffee orders that were placed. And they wanted to speak a little bit about their favorite parts of these experiences that they're so happy to have. So, let's see. Do you want to have one of your students go first?
Sure. All right, how about, Devin, you were already trying to chime in. Can you come up?
Come on, Devin.
Yeah, come on. Okay, Devin, can you tell us your name and what your favorite part of the Perk Up Cafe is? You do.
You do it.
My name.
My name is David Jones. My favorite is making ice cubes.
So we get a lot of iced drink orders, and he loves making ice cubes. That's his job.
Nice job, Devin. Thank you.
Thank you. Bo, do you want to come next? All right, tell us your name and your favorite part.
My name is it's probably Basil. I like pushing the cart. I like and delivering coffees to my teachers.
Great job.
Thank you, Bodie. All right, and Andy. Andy, get nice and close to the microphone.
Sandy Lyle. My favorite parts of Perk Up Cafe is making hot coffee and hot water.
Nice. Andy likes brewing the hot water and the hot coffee. All right, and I think we're going to hear about Perk Up pins next.
Yes. So I have some students who are eager to talk about those. Bella, can you come on up?
My name is Bella, and I like Perk Up pins, and it's one of my favorite. And I like going to the football game and running up with the football players.
We sold a lot of pins at the football game, didn't we?
Yeah.
Bella and her crew sold about 80 pins that night. Nice job. Thank you, Bella. Brianna, could you come on up? All right, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name's Brianna.
And can you tell us what you love about Perk Up pins?
Making them.
Okay. Do you have a lot of design ideas that you bring to me?
Yes.
Did you get to sell some at the football game?
Yes.
All right. And what other new job did you get to do today?
The mail.
The mail. Which do you like more, Perk Up pins or the mail?
Perk Up pins.
I thought so. Do you have a favorite pin there that you have?
Yes.
Ooh, tie-dye. Love it. Thank you so much, Brianna. Yep. All right, Maddie. Come on over.
Oh my god.
You got this.
I'm
Okay.
scared right now.
Don't be scared.
I know.
You're okay. I'm right here with you.
I know that.
We practiced what we're going to say, so just start right there, and you got this.
So scared.
You're fine. Got this. I'll help you. Let's start here. My name is.
My name is Maddie. I like Perk Up pens because I love my school, and the pens show school, right? This is my favorite pen.
Nice marble orange one. Nice job. Thank you so much, Maddie. You did amazing. And come on over, John. All right, can you introduce yourself and tell
Yeah.
us what you like to do?
Yeah. So my name is John. I like pickup hands because we have an Instagram. Please follow us, pickup hands. Thank you.
All right, thank you, John.
All right, and I think some people did place an order, so we'll deliver that now. Is that okay?
All right.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank I don't even know these people. I do. In the corner. What is this? I do. Who's this? Look. Who's this? Who's that? Oh, I see. You're very welcome. You and me? Okay. Who are we delivering to? Okay. Do you know who that is? Okay. Let's look at the names.
Yeah, if they have like money. Do I have to do a TikTok?
Oh my gosh.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for that, for the treats and the drinks and the wonderful presentation. We want to recognize the students for their contributions. So I'm going to read all the names of the students that are helping in these programs, but then we'll hand out the certificates to the students that are here. So,
Oh no.
thank you. Braxton Denner, Bella Haddad, Elijah Jackson, Brianna Leitz, John Mears,
Come here, mommy.
JJ Robbins, Jaden Robertson, Alexander Sandoval, Madison Schumer,
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Anthony Staggers, Bode Basil, Jessica Boytz, Shelby Hallman, Devin Jones,
Oh my god. Oh my god.
Andrew Lyle, and then Jake Lavala, Nick Lavala, Aaron Seeger, and Josh Schwade. Thank you so much, everybody. And then we're just going to take a 5-minute break and gather out there for pictures. So if any board members want to join us.
Oh, you can use mine.
All right. Big thank you to the Perk Up Cafe. That was a great presentation. Thank you for the coffee and the drinks. Also note the pins that each board member received. We received a donation from a donor, so each board member would have a Perk Up pin. So thank you for that as well. And with that, we will move on to section 1.08, comment on any topic. And it looks like we have Jean Dandos.
Doesn't matter what time I come here, I always wind up first. Hi, everybody. My name is Jean Dandois. I live in Trapp. I'm here today to ask the board to vote against continuing to modify the education equity policy with the task force and to keep the current approved policy as it is. We should not keep wasting time wordsmithing. Instead, please reconsider instituting a task force to develop an action plan to work on next steps to address some of the inequities we see at PVSD. You had your first volunteer for that last week, and I would also be happy to volunteer. I was incredibly disappointed to hear commentary that an equity policy is unnecessary. The equity policy is in place to protect the vulnerable, those students and families who may not get an equitable education for a variety of reasons. But consider what all students should be learning from enactment of this policy and an action plan, including students and families who might not need the protection of the education equity policy. In the real world, in business, an engineer needs to know that 2 + 2 = 4, but he or she also needs to be culturally proficient to succeed. I worked for a Fortune 100 company for 30 years, and I now work for a Fortune 500 company. Both of these companies have robust diversity and equity policy and provide training. Understanding implicit bias, becoming culturally proficient, and respecting everyone in the workplace is a condition of employment. Many PVSD students will enter a global workforce. They will work with people from all over the world, people of different races, different religions, people who may be gay or transgender. It will be imperative for our students to be able to navigate a workforce which looks a lot more like the world and a lot less like the PVSD community. They will need to treat their coworkers with dignity and respect. If we want our kids to be prepared for the real world, they better be aware of the need for equity and why it takes work to achieve, because it doesn't just happen. My point is that this policy not only helps those who can be discriminated against, it's an important pillar in educating all of our students, and watering down the policy would be a disservice to them. An argument for watering down this policy was made by pointing out how many districts haven't enacted an equity policy. So PVSD is leading in this area. That's great. Why would we back off on an area of differentiation? If we had the top math program in Pennsylvania, would we back off? If our music program was winning awards, would we stop supporting it? I hope you had time to reflect since you rejected the idea of keeping the policy as is and moving forward. Please make the right choice tonight to show you stand with all of our students and that you want to ensure the most vulnerable are protected in word and in deed.
Are there any other speakers? Seeing none.
Hi, as many of you know, my name's Christian Seibel. I'm from Collegeville. Kinda wasn't planning on being at a lot of these meetings this year, but you know, what happens, happens. I wanted to also discuss Policy 832. I've been at the last couple meetings. They've been running long, but I really wanted to collect my thoughts before I made a comment. And I just want to put stuff out there. I wanted to ask a specific question first. I've noticed that a lot of people who are defending modifications or changes to Policy 832 are citing that it's necessary to have these changes in order to match our community better, that it's got to be better suited to our students, which I think is great. But my question is, what are you suiting it to? Because it seems that a lot of these things do apply to our students that are being struck. Something like gender, the entire definition of gender in this policy is being struck as though it doesn't apply to our students. And obviously, something like gender applies to every student in this building on a spectrum. Something like explicit bias, implicit bias. You can't tell me that when you were going over this policy or when the task force was going over this policy and you guys were reviewing it, that these things didn't seem like they applied to our school district. Obviously, explicit and implicit bias can be seen throughout the school district. And it's an important thing to be able to distinguish and accept. Okay, I could point you to dozens of students who I know personally that have experienced implicit or explicit bias in our community. So when we're saying that we need to almost suit this to our community best, I think that's a great idea. Maybe include policies that we've already taken, acknowledge those in this policy, reference specific actions that our school district is taking. But removing definitions that obviously apply to a very large portion of our student body and our community body, it seems foolish, just in that nature. So I'd really just ask you guys to, when you're looking forward with this policy, try to keep it true to the intent. I'm seeing a lot of the meat being taken away from this, and all it's doing is giving our board a cop-out when it comes to inclusivity and equity. We're saying, hey, the policy isn't going to say that anymore, and so that we don't really have to be held to that standard anymore. Okay, we want this policy to be as robust as possible so that we can use it to make as many changes as necessary to support our student and community body. I don't see a purpose to taking things out, taking entire definitions of things out, maybe changing slightly to best suit our actions as a school board and as a school district. But it seems pointless to take something like gender, implicit bias, explicit bias just entirely out of the equation, out of the policy. So I just wanted to put that out there. I'm really hoping that you guys either accept the version that was originally accepted by the board or keep it true to the intent of that policy. Thank you.
Any other speakers?
Hi, my name is Isadora Dela Cruz. I'm from Collegeville. Sorry for my appearance. I just came from work. But I'm sure you're tired of hearing about the same thing, the same policy every time about how it shouldn't be changed. But it should really be kind of alarming for you that there's so many people that come out to show their support in keeping it the same. And the purpose of this policy is to make our community as a whole and our school district comfortable and united. And if this was something that was, prior to the review, okay, then I don't see why it's something that we would look over again. And I feel like we keep hitting this block in the road because we're focusing on these tiny details that are actually really important, as many of our community members have shared tonight and other nights. And I just feel like we need to move on from it, because are you really going to decide on doing something that majority of your community is not in favor of, something that doesn't support your community, something that's only in your favor for your own agenda? And I think moving forward, what we should be doing is we should be reaching out to not just the administrators, but the students themselves, and we have the Safe Collective group, which we have been working on dress code policy, policy 8 through 2, a lot of things like that in the past. And it seems kind of rude and disrespectful to the students' work to create these kind of like school and administrative committees, because our input is kind of the most important input. It tells you what's happening in the school right now and what's going on and how people are actually feeling and what they think would be beneficial. So why would we exclude our students from that process? They have the first-hand accounts and the experience and the understanding. And I think that would be the most beneficial course of action, because sitting here and talking about the same thing over and over again and running in circles when it clearly doesn't support your community at all, and yet for whatever reason you still want to keep pushing something that isn't inclusive, it's a shame, and we should stop wasting our time on something like this and instead think about how can we put these words into action, because right now they're just words on a paper. And now they're words on a paper that want to be erased, which is sad. And instead, those words should be taken into action, and we should think about disciplinary actions and how we go about approaching racial situations. We need to better understand our students as a whole and get their input, because that's what's the most important. Thank you.
Any other speakers? Okay. Reports, presentations. Last week we had a student liaisons report. Do you guys have anything new to offer?
I'll just note that we did beat Springford on Friday night. That's all I got. That's all I got.
I don't have anything as well.
Thank you.
All right. I have nothing on my end. You have anything?
No, I have nothing, thank you.
Do you have anything?
Nothing from the solicitor.
All right. Any board members have any comments on board and district committee reports? Okay. We'll move on. Section 3. Looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's multiple seconds. Any discussions? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. And the ayes have it. Education, Dr. Campley.
Yes, education 4.01 through 4.05 are all on consent. 4.06 was the enrollment report discussed last meeting, and 4.07 action was already taken at the last meeting. That ends my section.
Thank you very much. Section 5, business, Mr. Keenan.
5.01 was last week. We had a presentation from Mr. Weaver. 5.02 is on consent. 5.03 was last week. We discussed the bond financing. 5.04 is on consent. 5.05, we have an approval of a vendor for snow removal. The approval is asked for Lenhart Contractors for snow removal. So I'm going to move that we approve Lenhart Contractors for snow removal. Are there any questions about the bids or the bids that we got or didn't get?
We'll need a second first.
Second.
And there is a second. Now, are there any discussions? Seeing none, all in favor all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. And the ayes have it.
We had 5.06, a report last week. 5.07, 8, 9, 10 were on consent. 5.11, we have a new item. We talked about it, and we're, I think, ready for it. I move that we name the Middle School East Loop 5 Tamanund Circle.
Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second by Mr. Fountain. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
5.12, we have another new item. We have a vendor, motion to approve center stage lighting and rigging for sound system upgrades to to MSE, auditorium.
Is there a second on the motion? I have a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it.
All right, and 5.13, our last item, another new item. We have approval of an amended contract for the high school auditorium electrical work. That would be, we'll make a motion to approve the amended contract with Pittsburgh Stage Company.
We have a second. We have a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
All right, and that ends my section.
Thank you. Payment of bills, Dr. Kolar.
Item 6.01, I make a motion to ratify the bills and payrolls. Authorization of payments.
Is there a second? We have a second. Any discussion?
I need to abstain because I received reimbursement for power packs.
Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. And the ayes have it.
Item 6.02, I make a motion to approve treasurer's report and financial statements.
We have a second. Discussions? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have that.
That concludes section 6.
Thank you. Professional personnel, Ms. Evans-Brockett.
All items in section 7 are on consent.
Thank you very much. Support personnel, Mr. Fountain. Thank you very much. Governance, Ms. White. Ms. White.
9.01 is a first reading on policies as presented. Are there any questions? Okay. 9.02 is a opening of a discussion for the policy 832 educational equity.
actually a motion to continue.
And I make a motion to continue review of policy 832.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. Discussions? Dr. Kohler?
Just want to point out that it was administration's recommendation that we not continue to review this policy, so I'm not sure why the agenda still has the motion, I guess because it was on there last week, but administration has recommended that we keep policy 832 in place as is and form a task force to start taking some action on the policy.
Mr. Fountain?
Yeah, I just had a couple of thoughts as far as this. I did read what Dr. Russell had said. I've heard all the discussion over the last couple of weeks. There is nothing on policy 832 that I am hoping to get rid of. It is more a rather one of those things that there's been a ton of information that's come out in the last few weeks that seems like there's a lot of questions and a lot of comments and a lot of thoughts. There's a lot of passion surrounding the entire thing. My concern is that I don't want to see us get caught up in semantics and avoid the idea of what we're really looking for, and that's the action plan to move forward with it, to have some action that puts some substance to those words on that piece of paper. So the idea of returning it to the task force for me is that they will in turn then, if they would need to wordsmith it, I don't know that there'll ever be a wording that is going to be completely agreed upon by everybody. But the wording, I think, is secondary to the action, and the action is what's needed. And moving forward with that action, with the recommendations, the input from everybody that's been speaking for the last few weeks is what I would like to see. That is why I see it moving back to the task force as being a positive step in the right direction. It is still the policy that's on the books. It's never been removed.
Right, so I guess what you're talking about doesn't need to be part of policy. We don't need to have a policy committee to have a task force for action. So I think we're talking about the same thing, but going about it different ways. Like I think by keeping the policy as it is, we can have a task force to have an action plan. I don't think we need to kick this back to committee. I think that's just going to delay the process, is my point.
Well, I think the idea and my idea of the task force itself, they've put a lot of work on it there, and I agree with what the students were talking about, have the students involved with it. I think that that's extremely important. I think that what we are seeing is that right now, good, bad, or indifferent, we are having situations where there is bullying and there are things taking place every single day in the schools. We need to have some action plan in place. Now, the policy has been on the books for 2 years, but it has not had an action plan attached to it. I would encourage the task force to take that on. If wordsmithing is necessary in some place or another, that's fine. Let the task force take a look at it, but create the action plan to move it forward.
Yeah.
The motion, though, is to move it back to policy committee. So it sounds like what you're in support of is moving it for administration to create an action plan task force, or to use the task force to create an action plan.
There has been still questions on both sides as far as the wording of it. Now, the wording hasn't changed officially. It is still the same document that we have on the books. But because there has been so much input from the community, from everybody involved, of what is it really supposed to say, okay, let them continue to work, but with the idea of creating an action plan.
Can I just interject real quick? The problem with sending it back to the task force is that you can't really you can't develop an action plan when the policy itself is up in the air. Because if the policy itself is changed, the action plan may or may not even be enforceable. That is why if you leave the policy as is, get rid of moving it forward to looking at this proposed version, and instead taking that task force with some other additional volunteers and switching their focus to being an action plan. Keep the policy that we have now. We don't need to send it back anywhere to be re-looked at. That's just going to delay the process. because you can't do an action plan if you don't have a policy that's set and that we're agreed on.
And yet we still have that action plan in place. It has not been rescinded. It is still there.
But the problem is you can't do two things simultaneously. You can't be discussing changing the policy and also building an action plan at the same time, because it's two different things occurring. If the policy then gets changed in a way that doesn't uphold the action plan that's put in place, it doesn't work. You have to have your policy first, and then you can go from there. The policy is what drives the action plan. So we need to move forward with the action plan. If we send this back and have them review it again, we're delaying having an action plan. We're delaying putting anything in place that helps support our students. And that is absolutely the opposite of what it sounds like you want to have happen.
And the way I see it, and I may be wrong, I don't know. I'm not right about a whole lot of stuff, but the way that I see it, by sending it back and giving it to them to continue to work, not necessarily on changing words, not necessarily on any of that. We have the policy that's here. We need to create something that's going to create action to do, some measurable steps that we can take that is going to incur. If over the course of that, wording is modified, wording is shifted, wording is done with the input from the community that we've had on both sides, everything. Given that, if it does work, I don't think it is going to change the philosophy behind the policy. I think that will come along with the action plan. That's my view.
So I did get the memo where the administration wants to leave policy 832 in place and then form a task force to make the action plan. I also did get that the July 7th, 2020 policy meeting, which we talked about at the work session last week, has now been placed on YouTube. And so I had the opportunity to watch the extensive conversation that happened at that time. And after listening to that conversation and listening to what the policy committee talked about at that time, I'm very much in favor of sending this back to policy so they can continue with the task force and have it completed with an action plan. But let me tell you why. Even back on July 7th, the administration, as they presented the policy to the policy committee, called it a sample. But what I found most interesting was the board president at the time questioned the administration if the policy brought any questions or conversations based upon a conference that happened previously that fall. So you're talking the fall of 2020. And what the board president was referencing and what she referenced at the meeting was that the policy be built from the ground up, wanting to make sure that it's something that the community embraces and making sure it's promoted in a way that's effective. And her concerns at that time were accurate because the policy has been in place for 2 years and there's been no action plan. On April 21st, 2002, I questioned the administration about why there was no action plan and did not get a real answer. I got an answer that, well, we look at things here and we look at things here, but we don't have an educational equity audit, we don't have an educational action plan. And the administration had April, May, June, July, August, September, and October to get that job done if they so wanted to. They actually had all of the past 2 years to get that done if they wanted to. The policy has no bite. And the worry that I had when I first learned about Policy 82 is the same worry I have today, is that the policy has no bite, it has no backing. 2 years without an equity audit, 2 years without an equity action plan, 2 years with it not being built from the ground up, 2 years with it not being embraced by the community, and 2 years that it's not effective, and that needs to change. The task force did a really good job. Did they get to the finish line? No, because members of our community did their job and came out and showed concerns. Those concerns, the task force should sit down and talk about again, and they should return to the policy committee with updates based on the conversations they've had with community members and an equity action plan. We shouldn't need to form another task force. This is the job of the administration. We were told that the policy committee is there to hold the administration accountable. They've had 2 years to get something done. It's not getting done. And it's clear from the onus of when this policy was created that the work that happened maybe in a conference in the fall, and the concern of the board at that time seamlessly came true. It all came true. The worries that the board had came true. We have a feckless plan that's not followed, 2 years of the administration not putting together an EEA or the Equity Action Plan, okay? It was never built from the ground up, and it didn't embrace the community. Now we are. The purpose of a task force was to get people from all over the community together. And of course, there are going to be concerns when it came back. And those concerns they're fine. There's enough information, enough data that the administration can meet again with the task force to listen to the concerns that have been presented to the community, and then come back to the policy committee with updated information and the equity action audit, equity educational audit, and the action plan for policy committee to review. Ms. Evans-Brockett.
So I'm going to disagree with a lot of what you said, because I was a board member who was at that conference. And I was not on the policy committee at the time that this was approved. But that conversation that you mentioned where the president was questioning, did we do everything that we needed to do? Our superintendent, Dr. Russell, was very clear on yes, we did do everything we needed to do. We have had multiple meetings about this. We don't need to keep meeting. Mrs. Mayers was a member of that policy committee and supported the policy at that time. In terms of you saying your reasoning for this, we have this kind of informal rule as a board of, it's called the no surprises rule, where we're not supposed to come to meetings throwing something at our administration that they're not prepared for. And that's exactly what you did at that policy committee. And as a member sitting there,
Well, that's not true.
my heart dropped.
Wait a second, you're not telling the truth.
Excuse me, I am
Not
speaking.
interrupt her.
If she's going to tell a lie, I can. I did. The administration knew what was happening at the policy meeting. I had met with the administration prior, giving them their concerns on April 21st, as I
Okay.
just stated.
We were all shocked at that policy committee meeting that you wanted to get rid of this policy. There was fear. Dr. Russell was fearful that this is gone because Mr. Keenan has outright stated he wants, his goal while he is on the board is to get rid of this policy. You, at the policy meeting where the task force presented, said you support the policy as written by the task force. You said they did their job. I think we need to take it as is. That is clearly taking out language that is so important. So we can sit here and we can say over and over again that we support this. One member of your team has clearly said they do not support this. You have said you do not support this through your actions and your words throughout your campaign. And to say that we are going to sit here and continue to work on this wording, these students don't care about the wording. That has no effect on them whatsoever. They want the action. And the only way to get the action is to have a task force that puts together an action plan. So I am motioning to amend this motion to say, motion to form a task force for the implementation of policy 832.
Is there a second? Any discussion?
I have discussion. So
I thought, are we allowed to have discussion on an amended motion?
yes.
Just on the amendment.
So as far as why there hasn't been an action plan thus far,
You can only talk about the amendment now, I'm sorry.
isn't that about the amendment to have a task force so that we have an action plan?
No, can you read back the amended motion?
Motion to form a task force for implementation of 832.
Yeah.
So, with regards to the task force, that is the piece of this, and the accountability piece of that was lost in the adoption of the policy. So I support the formation of the task force, and I support everything you said with regards to your perception of watching that 2020 meeting back, because your interpretation of it was spot on. There was due diligence and questioning that happened during that meeting, I was not at that meeting either, as a sitting board member at that time. However, it was crystal clear that there was onus and responsibility by administration that was not carried out. And that accountability, that was lost the last 2 years. So I don't consider it a setback, I consider it a pause. I think we need to pick up with the intention that was left off in that meeting in 2020. I agree with you that there should be accountability. And not only should there be accountability with enforcing the policy with the audit, but there should be further work and continued work. Mrs. Smith had said during that policy meeting that she wanted to further integrate the work of the policy into curriculum. And that work has continued the last 2 years and through professional development through the last 2 years. So that all did come to fruition. But the piece that got dropped, which you zoned in on, was 100% accurate, that there was no accountability in terms of a deliverable, in terms of an action plan. But nowhere does that have anything to do with amending wording. So until we find out through an action plan that somehow the policy doesn't work and doesn't suit the needs of the students and the staff, then I think we need more due diligence in terms of letting the administration deliver on what was promised and should have been delivered to the board and to the student body. I think that amending the policy is not, it's taking us in the wrong direction. So I support what you're saying, and I support what you're saying, Don, for the most part. I just think that we're having an issue deciding where that should be done. Because you did the right thing by bringing it up to policy, like, hey, where is this? It was nowhere. But fixing the wording wasn't the issue. It was the accountability part that was the issue. So I've done a lot of soul searching about the whole situation and all of the discrepancy and all of the consternation over it. And what really brought it home for me was revisiting that YouTube video that's been posted this whole time. Because we were in COVID, thankfully we could reference it back. I think we should be able to reference everything back. If we talk about it in public, we should be able to reference it back. And everybody can be involved. Everybody can be included. Everybody can have a voice. But eliminating it shouldn't be an option. And you're right, we weren't able to deliver on it as written, but that's not at the fault of the policy, that was the fault of the follow-through. So I just feel like we should, if you want to set a time frame, okay, I would support that, I suppose, if it's a reasonable time frame, but I think that we need to see a deliverable back from, and I think the memo also acknowledged the responsibility. I think Dr. Russell acknowledged it last week publicly that she made a mistake and misread the situation, and I think that if we're looking back historically at that 2020 meeting, I think that her intention was not carried through. I think she would agree with that. She's not here. I feel bad talking about her not here, but Lori is here.
And if I may, if the board would so allow me, I would just like to comment. Dr. Russell and I have debriefed quite a bit over the last week about this in particular. And while I recognize that there is conversation about an equity action plan, and I think Dr. Russell and I have been very transparent in that we can't produce for you a document that says equity action plan with every piece on it that we have done. However, there have been many things accomplished in these 2 years. They may not be in one plan, but I could list off for you many of them: our comprehensive plan, our professional development plan, our curriculum. We've changed some of our courses. There are lots of things that we have done that we can put in an equity plan, and we would love to add to that equity plan with the task force to be able to, what ideas do you have? What are we missing? What haven't we looked at? We did our data presentation this year with completely an equity lens, more so than we've ever done before. So there has been work done. We need to get it into that nice document that you are looking to see so that there can be accountability, and we absolutely acknowledge that. Our goal, we've talked about this, is to listen and to respond to our community, to our staff members, and to bring forth something that represents that. We are, as was in the memo this week, recommending that our efforts would be best spent at this time focusing on that action plan. The policy, we are asking or recommending that the policy 832 stay in its existing language, and that we spend our efforts focusing on the actionable items. So you can hold us accountable, and that we are able to report out on those things, and that we can include our community in that. So again, I just want you to know we recognize that the current version 3 does not represent where our community is at this point. We would prefer to keep 832 as is, or at a very minimum, continue to work on it. Thank you.
Do you have the ability to produce a report for each particular school that's intersected by gender as defined in the policy, race as defined in the policy, ethnicity, social economic status, English learner status, and disability?
Most of that information is available on the Future Ready Index, so we would be able to break that out. We did a lot of that on the data.
But intersected by each?
We can certainly look at that, and I'm sure that we're able to do that with our Linkit data warehouse. Maybe we could talk more specifically about what you're looking for, and we could work to produce that.
Well, that's what's in the policy, so it's not what I'm looking for. It's what the policy calls for.
I think we'd be able to do that.
Mr. Keenan?
I'm talking on the motion to amend the motion. The initial motion was to continue review of policy 832, and the motion to amend that is to create a task force.
Create a task force to implement policy 832, correct?
Policy 832. And just on that amendment, for changing the discussion of 832 to a policy to implement 832, the administration is under the mistaken assumption or belief that most of the community supports this policy, and there is a large contingent of supporters here in this room, and they're very loud, but most of the community does not support policy 832. I received the most votes in the last election, and I was elected in order to remove policy 832 and get rid of critical race theory. And that it is the vocal minority who has been bullying the school into this. We do not need a we do not need a task force to implement 832. If we need to continue discussion and there is some common ground, and notice I said common ground that we can work on. We've formed a task force to arrive at that, and there's been discussions about reaching a common ground from our side of the aisle, and no willingness to reach a common ground on the other side of the aisle. The community does not support 832, and it did not know what was in 832. And if there had been a task force formed to talk about the things that are actually in 832, not this idea of equity that was discussed over the years, but the things that are actually in policy 832. The genders, the implicit bias, to discuss those at a task force and to figure out what they are, which is what was occurring over the summertime, to figure out if those are things the community wants in their policy for their school district. And the task force that was formed decided that those things could not be in a policy that was enforceable. And those things are not in a policy, that they're not things the school district should be doing. And they're not things the school district actually can do. But on this amendment, I am against the amendment to form a task force to implement policy 832. And one last point on that I just pretty much led into. Policy 832 cannot be implemented. If you want to implement an action plan discriminating against students on the basis of, for example, race, that is discriminatory under federal law, and you will not be able to undertake those actions. That's it.
Dr. Campley.
So first of all, this policy is not critical race theory. Critical race theory is not something that the public school system is attempting to do. They are looking at finding ways to create an environment that supports all students, regardless of gender, race, ethnicity, special education needs, you name it. And there is no reason why there's a meet in the middle when we're talking about making sure all students are included. why would we meet in the middle, say 9/11 happened and terrorists, that whole situation, there's no meet in the middle when people are attacking other people. There's no meet in the middle when you're saying that students shouldn't be included and supported and felt safe when they come to school. The entire thing is ludicrous. And just to go on the record, you won by like a handful of points, so get over it already.
I'm just going to ask that everyone just continue to remain as professional as humanly possible. Other discussions on the amended motion? All right, so we have an amended motion. The amended motion is to create a task force to implement policy 832. I'll ask for a roll call.
Dr. Campley?
Yes.
Mr. Dorr?
Yes.
Evans Brockett?
Yes.
Mr. Fountain?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan?
No.
Dr. Kohler?
Yes.
White?
Yes.
Ms. Mares?
No.
Mr. Saylor?
No.
I have 6 yeses.
That ends the section.
Great. Thank you very much. Comments from the audience? I'm sorry?
Still have a motion, that was only the amendment.
No, that passed.
We're done.
We're-
Move on.
No, thank you, though. Comments from the audience? Yes. Oh, hold on one second, just let her get the V clock thing
Okay,
going.
no worries.
Ready? Go ahead.
My voice is going in and out, so please forgive my voice. I'm not sick. I just have really bad allergies. But I just want to say thank you to the school board. I'm so emotional. I'm trying not to cry.
Real quick, just your name. Just
Trina
correct.
Sadler, I'm
Thank you,
sorry. You know who I am. Trina Sadler, Skippack Township. I just want to say thank you to the school board. I'm very appreciative of the decision that was made tonight. I'm just excited, and I'm on board to support you in any way to get this action plan developed. Whatever you need from me as a community member, you let me know. If I got to come out Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday night, I will come out to support the development of this action plan. So I truly want to say thank you. Thank you. Our children, my sons, a lot of our children, we thank you for doing this to support them. I just want to thank you all so much. Thank you.
Anybody else? Mr. Seibel?
Hi, Christian Seibel. I'm from Collegeville. I'm a student at the high school. Hello again. I just wanted to talk about what just happened. First, thank you so much to the whole board for passing this amended motion to actually take action. It really is what the students are looking for. As Ms. Evans-Brockets pointed out, the words are not the end of the world as long as the action taken with them is effective in nature. I will say, though, this board meeting concerned me a lot. Watching this interaction with our school board concerned me as a student at our high school and as an individual with a younger brother in the district who still has many years to come here at PV. It concerned me a lot. I watched a campaign as opposed to a collaboration. We have people talking about how they got more votes than everybody else, meaning they're speaking for the majority. You need to understand that winning, great, you got on the board. Now, the goal of this body should be to collaborate, to do the best for our students, for our parents and families, and for the community. Okay? Yelling, I'm the one who's speaking for the majority here, so you guys should be listening to me, that's childish. I'm sorry. Okay, we've got other board members who are actively shutting down other board members, saying like that's not on topic anymore, while for board members who they tend to agree with are being allowed to get to the point. When they get there, they tend to take their time. Okay? And it's on both sides. Both sides are very frustrating to watch, because I'm watching two sides going, well, this is my politics and this is why I'm on the board, as opposed to I'm on the board because I'm trying to work with you guys to help the students. If you don't think that this is the belief of the main student body, it may not be, whether it's the belief of the parents, all that, talk to them. Talk to them, because I see a lot of individuals on this board just saying, hey, this is what the community wants, without actually checking. There was a claim that Mr. Keenan's points were most accepted by the community, by the majority of the individuals. Unless you have any actual way to prove that that's the majority opinion, saying statements like that is just throwing stuff into the wind. Like, there's no point to it. Okay, I'm sorry. This meeting was really disappointing to watch as a student. And it's kind of scary, because I'm worried as to how you guys are going to operate in the future. Okay, I've said it before and I'll say it again. I said it while I was a student representative. This board needs to start working together, and we need to stop picking sides of a battle. Thank you so much for implementing having a task force to implement this policy, but it's not going to stop here, and there's going to be more action from the board necessary. Thank you.
Any other comments? Any other comments? Seeing none, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Isadora. So let me just create an environmental circle for you guys. So there's the students at the center, and outside of that is parents, because students will talk to their parents about how their day went and stuff like that. And then outside of that is administrators. And I think it would be foolish to make the people that are the furthest from day-to-day school life responsible for creating the actions that are necessary to implement this policy that the community supports. So I just ask that you please don't let this action plan be formed behind closed doors, so that there aren't any misunderstandings or conflict from the community. It's most important to include them so that we don't have to hit these bumps along the road as we were today. And I just wanted to thank you all for the progression that we've been making. I think the equity policy to even be created in the first place was definitely a big step forward for PV. And I think that the action plan is another couple steps forward that I'm really glad that we're able to make. And it's disappointing to me that there were so many incorrect facts and childish remarks being made at the meeting tonight by school board members. That's something that I would maybe expect from a child, but not the people sitting in front of me that are supposed to be holding themselves to a certain level of dignity and respect. And Mr. Keenan, with all due respect, you speak from a place of ignorance, as many of these board members do. Many of you are oblivious to the struggle of living while black, living while brown, living while being a person of color, living while queer. You don't understand what it's like to be called slurs every day and have to act like it didn't happen, or to be told that people don't like you because you're black, or to be told by teachers that you look dirty because your skin is brown. You don't understand what happens behind the scenes, and you're furthest from that. And it is ignorant to say that situations don't occur and to not acknowledge the fact that there are problems going on in our school from day to day. And you will never understand what that is like as a white male or a white person, what that is like and how that feels. And I think it's unfair and disrespectful to speak about something that you cannot fully understand and you're not fully willing to listen to your community about. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, comments from the board members? Ms. Evans-Brockett?
Thank you. I'm going to take a little bit of a turn here and just want to put a plug out for Power Packs. We are doing a collection at the homecoming game this Friday of toys for our upcoming holiday shop. We supplied toys to over 100 PV students last year as part of this holiday shop, and we're hoping to do even more this year. So bring a toy or gift item that's appropriate for infants through age 18 and drop it at any of the bins at the gates at the homecoming game. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Kolar, Mr. Fountain, Ms. White, Mr. Dorr, Mr. Keenan.
I've been discussing some of the inequitable impacts of the policies that previous boards have created and tried to address them, and every time I got shouted down. And I was the only one that wanted to do that, and I was the only one undertaking an action plan. That's it.
Dr. Campley, Mrs. Mayers.
Yes. So I just wanted to say, I mean, I'm thankful, very thankful to the community for continuing to be involved. I too have spent a lot of time reflecting and talking to some members in our community. I talked to several members on the task force, and the members that I spoke to were really shared the process as they saw it and how they landed where they did as far as the language that they were suggesting. So I was looking forward to going back to having more discussion, but that doesn't mean that, I mean, of course our community needs to move forward. And I continue to be really concerned to hear students saying that there are slurs being thrown at them, teachers speaking to them, and in a manner that is not respectful, kind, or supportive of them being a person in front of them. So those kinds of things could have stopped in the past and should have stopped and need to continue to stop and be brought to the administration's attention so that it can be acted upon. And so I do look forward to hearing an action plan, but that's completely unacceptable and something that I would hope the school, we're mostly hearing from high schoolers, is really taking a hard look at, because that's very concerning.
Ms. Smith? I am frustrated that we continue to go back to talk about an election rather than why things are happening. And it seems to be a running issue that anytime someone from an opposite party on the board does something, it becomes an election issue. They're looking at curriculum, they must have an issue inside. They're doing this, they must have an issue inside. You know, the board just took a 6-3 vote today that mixed together party lines because there were 9 individual people. There's not always an ulterior motive to why things are getting done, rather just prudence and reviewing. So I hope that the board doesn't find a way to get along, because that's not the objective of a board, is to get along and work and to do everything 9-0. But I hope the board starts to find a way to work together without feeling there's an ulterior motive to everything that's being done. That's what I would like to see happen, that we continue to do what's really best for all students and not ignore students that feel as though that there are issues in the school because it makes them feel uncomfortable. And I hope the administration starts doing it unbelievably better job of protecting the students while they're in our school buses and in our school buildings. Because not just 2 years, not just 5 years, but for 10 years, we've had the same issues. And Policy 832 and an action plan, these are all great items. But when I hear an entire school year go by and a student says, hey, I wasn't harassed because I have a gender identity issue, or because I'm black, or because I'm Jewish, or because I'm short, that'll be great. That's what we're all gonna be aiming for. Piece of papers aren't gonna make that happen. The administration, the people inside the buildings, getting tough and dealing with the issues as they are. Talking to counselors who worked at the school district 15 years ago, talking to students who were at the school district 20 years ago, the same issues are happening. We've had a policy for 2 years. There are issues why we brought this up. It wasn't an ulterior motive. It's to make things better. I'm glad today happened. I didn't necessarily get what I would like to happen, which was a continuation of the task force. But if this never happened, we wouldn't be having this conversation. And I really hope that that part never gets forgotten. That if we didn't bring this up in April and in May and go through what we've gone through and gone through the consternation and gone through the tears and gone through the crying, we wouldn't be at this position where we're at today, where we're finally going to get an action plan that we shouldn't have to ask for because it's the administration's job. And on that note, I will read Notice 1.03. Well, not read, but note that there's a notice of video recording, and note that the board will be having an executive session following the meeting for the purpose of negotiations, personnel, and student discipline. And before I adjourn, I want to wish all the students participating in homecoming dance this weekend a really fun, safe time, and another PV football win on Friday. Take care. The executive board will meet in there for the meeting.